A young woman, failing to get into college or any sort of employment, withdrew into herself for years. During this time, she became immersed in true crime stories, leading her down a dark path that would go on to ruin lives. Busan, South Korea, a bustling metropolis. Legends say that a train goes there. This is the story of a young woman named Jung Yoo-jung, a true crime fanatic. A lot of true crime fans out there have either been told that they're a little bit creepy or that they probably hold some murderous ideas themselves. Maybe they've even been told that they idolize killers based on the morbid fascination that they have with their cases. For the vast majority of these people, there's nothing wrong with them, but today's case is a little bit different. Jung didn't have the best life growing up, especially when it came to family. Her own mother abandoned her when she was only about 1 year old. She lived with her father for a few years after that, but ultimately he too threw her away by the time she was 6. This forced her to live with her grandparents. After not too long, her grandmother passed away. She was left with only her grandfather, a man she definitely wasn't a fan of. Jung reportedly suffered a lot of abuse from her grandfather, although she never specified what kind of abuse. When her grandfather remarried, this new step-grandmother started taking her anger out on her as well. To make matters worse, her father remarried too, starting a new family with another woman. Jung, understandably, felt completely betrayed by this. Jung blamed these problems at home on why she continually failed to have any sort of social life. In school, she wasn't necessarily bullied, but she was generally ignored by her classmates. Others in her class would often describe her as the weird kid, remembering how she would often prop her books up on her desk to make a sort of curtain around her so that others couldn't see her. Upon graduating high school, Jung attempted to go on to college. However, she failed her college entrance exams time and time again. Giving up, she ultimately became what they would call in Japan a hikikomori. In the West, I suppose we'd call her an extreme recluse. She stopped leaving her room entirely, abandoning the outside world and withdrawing into her own mind, her own disturbed mind. Now, without much to do, the 23-year-old Jung took an interest in what a lot of us have taken an interest in, true crime videos. Whether it came to books, TV shows, or internet deep dives, she was all over it. She went from looking into more normal-type crime stories to becoming fascinated with serial killers, especially serial killer cases that involve dismemberment. Beyond that, she took particular interest in cases in which the body was never found. She took a particular interest in this sort of crime as well as what they would call, directly translated, a don't ask me crime. This is a sort of crime in which the murder is more or less nonsensical, without motive, and totally random. Her interests began to go past the simple morbid fascination that most of us feel. She felt that it seemed like this might be a good way to release some rage. She started researching certain crime cases in which the victim's body was never found, researching for her own purposes, trying to find the best way to go about it. She spent a lot of time on her smartphone doing research. In order to up her game, she left her room and went to a local library, borrowing multiple books in order to satisfy her curiosity. Jung decided that a good way to find a victim would be to use a certain kind of app that was gaining in popularity at the time. This was an app in which you could request all sorts of services, from babysitting to tutoring. For a lot of these jobs, the buyer would either go to the seller's home or vice versa, creating plenty of potentially unsafe one-on-one private meetings, often in one's own home. She felt that hiring a teacher would be the perfect way to engineer an anonymous encounter. Jung searched this app for several months, talking to well over 50 potential tutors, focusing mainly on women in her age group. Over time, she would often narrow the conversation down to one specific question: do you hold the lessons in your home? It seems that the vast majority of these tutors found her insistence on this very strange and dropped the conversations after a while. That was until she came across a 26-year-old woman who lived alone in Busan, working as a freelance tutor while she studied at a local university. This woman, although her identity has not been revealed, has been referred to as Kim on the internet. It appears that, from online discourse, despite being an English tutor, she was a Korean citizen. Jung was posing as a young mother with a daughter in middle school. She asked Kim if she could drop off her daughter for Kim to tutor in her own home, to which Kim agreed, stating that it would be fine. It's unknown why exactly Jung chose to go after young women her age. Experts wonder if it's because she wanted to kill someone that she admired in a way, the kind of person who had what she wanted. These girls were pursuing higher education, talented in foreign languages, and doing very well for themselves socially. Kim herself went to a prestigious university and seemed to have a lot of friends. Jung wanted a piece of that for herself, but she was never able to attain it. Jung picked up the phone and called her father, making statements that, to him, seemed like threats. She told him, "If I do something big, you'll suffer," adding that she would die if she ever happened to do this big thing. Jung started getting ready to meet this tutor. In preparation, she cut off the bulk of her very long hair, giving herself a very different look. She went to a local supermarket and bought a knife often used in Chinese restaurants in the area. She got an online flea market app, searched for and purchased an average middle school uniform. Dressing up in this new uniform and hiding away her knife, she felt she was ready to do what she had been planning to do for months. Jung contacted the tutor, saying that she was about to drop off her daughter at her place. Being quite short and having softer features, it wasn't out of the question to think that Jung really was a middle schooler at first glance. It's likely that Kim didn't think anything was amiss, opening the door and letting Jung into her home. Once Jung was inside and the door was closed behind her, she pulled out her knife and began her assault. She stabbed the tutor well over 100 times, stabbing her and slashing her all over her entire body. She cut her jugular vein and punctured her lungs, but she also stabbed non-vital areas all over her body, like the palm of her hand. Even after the tutor lost the battle and her life had ended, Jung continued the attack. She kept stabbing her long after she was already dead. The attack was over. Jung did what she had decided to do all these months ago. Now, though, she didn't really know what to do. Despite all of her research, she realized she was pitifully unprepared. She bent down and cut off the tutor's fingers, feeling that this would keep her from being identified by her fingerprints. But now, things would get a little awkward. Jung realized that she didn't bring any new clothes to change into, failing to consider the possibility that she would get blood on her own clothes. She went into the tutor's closet and grabbed some of her clothes to wear. She then left the home and went out to a nearby shop to buy some trash bags, neglecting to buy anything like that herself. Then she left the house again to buy some bleach. And then, one more time, she left the home to go back to her place in order to get a suitcase and bring it back. In total, she was in and out of the victim's home 3 times before she finally had everything she needed. She took the victim's phone, her ID, and her wallet, thinking that this would completely erase her identity. In her mind, she was well on her way to pulling off the perfect crime. However, she didn't consider all of the CCTV cameras just outside. She didn't even try to hide her own face or her identity. She was seen on camera time and time again coming back and forth from the victim's home, face in full view, carrying more and more tools all the way. It was notable that, despite her sloppy procedure and complete lack of preparation, she didn't seem bothered at all. She was remarkably calm, seeming as if she was carrying along with any normal day. She showed no signs of panic, horror, or regret whatsoever. Jung began to dismember the body. It took a lot more work than she had anticipated. Not only that, but there was no way that the entire body would fit into the suitcase like she thought it would. She was forced to only take some of the body with her, leaving the rest back in the home. She went outside with the suitcase, which was now leaking a lot of blood, and hailed a taxi. A taxi stopped, and Jung asked the driver to take her out to an area in Yongsan, South Gyeongsang, which is about 20 kilometers north of Busan. She wanted to dispose of the body in an area near the Nakdong River, an area which she had previously often taken walks. The taxi driver found her and her luggage to be extremely suspicious, to say the least. As soon as he dropped her off, he contacted the police. The police came out and questioned Jung. She had already dumped the contents of her suitcase, but the police noticed a hefty amount of blood remaining on the inside of it. When they asked her why this was, she responded that she had recently had her period and it had gotten all over her clothes. It was a very, very bad period apparently, as the entire inside of the suitcase was soaked. The police then went out to the victim's home and found the remainder of the body. Jung was swiftly arrested and taken into police custody. The police searched Jung's phone, seeing that she had been researching how to kill and how to dispose of the body over and over again for quite some time. They also found that Jung was all set to meet up with 2 other tutors after the previous victim had she not have been caught. In her home, they found a note reading, "If I don't kill, my anger won't go away." Even seasoned experts were shocked and perplexed at how calm and collected Jung was throughout the entire ordeal. Lee Soo-jung, a forensic psychology professor at Kyunggi University, stated, "A person normally panics and becomes terrified when they kill someone, even if they are a criminal, but the scene shows no sign of panic or horror." He added that her behavior was, in short, very unusual. At first, Jung denied all accusations of murder. This didn't last too long, though, when the police were able to show her the evidence, which they had a lot of. They had all of the CCTV footage, the blood-stained suitcase and clothing, the victim's ID in her possession, and more. So, Jung changed up her story. She said that another person had asked her to get rid of the body, saying that they would let her assume the victim's identity if she went through with it. When the police didn't bite, Jung changed the story once again, saying that she indeed had killed the victim, but it was a crime of passion as the two had gotten into a very heated argument. After a good amount of pressure from both her father and grandfather urging Jung to tell the whole truth, she finally caved and told the police everything. During the investigation, Jung requested a mental evaluation, telling the police, "I definitely killed the victim, but she came back alive and spoke to me." Criminal psychologists felt that, with this statement, she was merely only trying to get a more lenient sentence by appearing mentally unstable. Nobody took her claims very seriously. The police finally found the rest of the victim's body in a grassy area on the edge of the Nakdong River. Jung was thrown into solitary confinement at the Busan Detention Center, held in a private room. She was forced to carry out all of her daily activities completely alone, far away from the general population. She was considered to be a prisoner in need of special attention, with a guard keeping a close eye on her at all times. At first, when Jung's picture began to appear on the news, her old classmates didn't even recognize her. They said that something about her eyes in particular were very different from when they had last seen her. While she had always been a weird kid, no one would have ever expected that she would pull something like this. They were all left in shock. In June, Jung finally appeared in front of the public for the first time since her arrest. It was the first time that any reporters had the chance to get a good video of her since her identity was released. In South Korea, the authorities will only release a suspect's identity if they feel that the public should be aware, such as in instances of violent activity. Reporters approached Jung, who had attempted to hide her face with a hat, sunglasses, and a mask. They asked her if she had any words, to which she responded with, "I apologize to the victim and her family. I must have been out of my mind." The police came out to say that Jung had never been diagnosed or treated for any sort of psychiatric problem. They noted that they would be conducting a test in order to determine whether or not she was clinically a psychopath. They asked her why she did this, noting that she responded that she did it out of pure curiosity, saying that her curiosity was piqued from reading novels and watching TV programs on murder. The judge set to preside over her case noted that Jung's crime had, quote, "spread fear in society that one can become a victim for no reason and incited a general distrust among their community." The judge wasn't really wrong. The entire community was shocked by the vicious yet impersonal nature of the crime. Jung didn't have any reason to kill this woman at all aside from the fact that she simply wanted to try it. The murder reminded the public of the case of Ko Yoo-jung, a woman who killed her ex-husband and chopped him up before ultimately throwing him into the ocean only a few years prior. Prosecutors stated their intent to go for the death penalty. Jung had indeed confessed to the crime by this point, but was still attempting to get a more lenient sentence by claiming that she had suffered from some sort of undiagnosed mental problem along with hallucinations. The court rejected this claim, saying, "The crime was carefully planned and carried out, and it is difficult to accept her claim of mental and physical disorder." The court, upon analyzing the entire case, concluded that Jung had likely committed the crime due to, in their words, a feeling of resentment and anger towards her family, helplessness due to continued failures such as college entrance exams and employment, and admiration for the lives of others. They did acknowledge that her reclusive nature and problems with her family likely did contribute to the development of her abnormal personality, but they still felt it was no excuse for what she did. The police also did have her take the psychopathy test that they commonly give suspects, noting that she scored a 28. This exceeded the score of a serial killer who had been sentenced to death for his crimes. The Busan District Court sentenced Jung Yoo-jung to life imprisonment in November of 2023. The judge concluded that Jung warranted the most grave punishment she could get. Not only that, but she's going to have to wear a tracking device on her person for the next 30 years. Hopefully, she also wanted to research what it's like to be in prison. Once again, everyone, thanks for watching my video. If you want to give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. If you want to support the channel even further, I do have a Patreon account which I always keep linked down in the description below. There you can see videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are back up too, so you can get all of the same benefits on there as well if you choose. So everybody, thank you for watching. This has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.